My girlfriend and I both time traveled to ancient times. She mocked me for only knowing how to be a small-time yamen runner. She plagiarized 1,000 years of classic poems, earning the title of female poetry immortal. She proposed merging the poll tax into the land tax, shaking the court. The crown prince cherished her like a pearl. The new emperor saw her as a demon. The executioner's blade rose and fell, and she, who once shouted, "I am the protagonist," turned into a bloody mist amidst the curses of the people. A time traveler, just a dish chewed up and spat out at the table of power. I time traveled. I time traveled into an ordinary yamen runner in the capital. As a modern youth who had read countless novels, I knew I should make a name for myself. But as a history enthusiast, I deeply understood the terrors of ancient times. It wasn't as beautiful as novels and dramas portrayed. For a yamen runner without status or position to rise through the ranks was almost a fool's dream. And if a person suddenly changed their nature, if an ordinary person suddenly became exceptionally talented one day, what awaited them was likely not wealth and status, but a deadly disaster. I deeply understood the importance of being discreet, so I carefully and cautiously played my role as a yamen runner, not daring to exhibit any abnormal behavior. And so I spent a year here. Every day was filled with caution and care, and I didn't expose myself. The days passed peacefully and steadily for a year. But one day a year later, something happened that changed my peaceful days. While strolling on the street, I saw a face that was incredibly familiar. That face was too much like my girlfriend from before time travel, Lin Wei, except she was wearing a thin gauze dress like a courtesan. At first, I didn't pay attention, thinking they were just two people who looked alike. However, just as I was about to leave, she seemed to have seen me too. With a look of surprise, she ran towards me. "Chinamo, where are we? Why is everyone wearing ancient clothes?" My pupils immediately shrank, and I quickly realized that she might have also time traveled. I looked left and right and found that no one had noticed this side. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief and pulled her into an alley. In her puzzled gaze, I told her about the time travel. "What did you say?" "We both time traveled." She was always so careless, and she even asked so loudly. My pupils suddenly shrank, and I quickly covered her mouth. "Keep your voice down. What if someone hears you?" But I still saw the light in her eyes, a light that shouldn't belong to this era. I knew something was wrong. "What are you doing?" She pushed my hand away angrily. "What if someone hears? We're time travelers now. We're the protagonists. We're going to make it big." I frowned, grabbed her hand, and persuaded her. Ancient times are not as simple as you think. Once you're exposed, it could be irreversible. She looked at me with disdain. "Don't give me that. You're just a coward. You time traveled, and you're still thinking about living a cowardly life." She threw my hand away. "You can live a cowardly life, but I won't." I wasn't angry. I knew that people like her, who often indulged in TV dramas and online novels, would have a strange fantasy about ancient times. I persuaded her gently. "I've been here for a year, and I know how terrifying ancient society is." "What? You've been here for a year?" Lin Wei looked at me in disbelief. I also looked puzzled at this time. Didn't I disappear for a year? She shook her head at this time. "No. I remember I time traveled after I separated from you at school." I pondered for a moment. It should be that the time we time traveled in reality is the same, but the time after time traveling is different. But I didn't dwell on it too much, and instead grabbed her hand. "Let's go. Come home with me." Seemingly moved by my words, she didn't let go of my hand and let me pull her to my small house. This was the small house that my original body bought. Looking at this dilapidated house, I saw a strong look of disgust in her eyes. But I didn't care about that. After all, I also deeply disliked this place when I first came to this house. I pointed to the stool next to me, signaling her to sit down. Then I walked to the door and said to her, "You stay here first. I have to go to work. I'll help you figure out your identity." After speaking, I went out to the yamen to continue working. To be honest, I was quite happy about Lin Wei's arrival. I had been pretending alone for a year. It was too hard. All the discomfort and grievances could only be held in my heart. It was too lonely. Now that there was someone I could talk to, and it was still my girlfriend from modern times, it finally allowed me to breathe a sigh of relief. However, when I returned home with a happy mood, I found that Lin Wei was actually gone. I was immediately anxious and distraught. Where did she go? Did the people from the brothel come looking for her, or? I thought of an even more terrible guess. Could it be that her identity has been exposed? I immediately broke out in a cold sweat and stood frozen in place at a loss. However, just then, impatient female voice came from behind me. Chen and Mo, what are you doing? I heard that familiar voice, overjoyed. Turning around, I saw Lin Wei standing not far behind me, looking at me with a look of disdain. I didn't notice her expression and ran straight over to hug her. That's great. You scared me to death. But Lin Wei pushed me away at this moment, then opened her mouth with a look of disgust. Chen and Mo, let's break up. When I heard her say break up, I was immediately confused. Break up? Why? Lin Wei sneered. Why? A good-for-nothing like you, lacking ambition and ability, is no longer worthy of me. I frowned unhappily. You think there's a problem with my way of life? What do you want to do? She sneered again, her eyes filled with a light that shouldn't belong to this era. I want to attract the Taiju's attention. I've inquired. The Taiju is young and promising, and is just when he needs people. I'm a highly educated student. With my knowledge, I can definitely help him get close to him. Even saying this, her face flushed. This is 10,000 times better than being a stinky constable. I didn't stop her, letting her leave. Her eyes, the eyes of modern Lin Wei, but burning with distorted ambitions for this era, had already said everything. She believed she was the protagonist, believing that this world would eventually crawl at her feet. My words, in her ears, were nothing more than the wails of the incompetent. I shook my head, silently sighing for her in my heart. In the next few days, life seemed to return to normal. Roll call, patrolling the streets, handling some trivial neighborhood disputes, dealing with the errands of superiors. I was still taciturn, still that inconspicuous, even a bit dull, Constable Chun. That afternoon, the ear room in the back hall of the Yamen was crowded with constables waiting to hand over shifts or take a break. The air was filled with the smell of sweat, cheap tea, and the noise of the marketplace. I huddled in a corner, using a dry, hard cake with cold water, trying to reduce my presence. Hey, have you heard? Zuyu Pavilion was lively last night. What's the commotion? Did some blind fool get drunk and make trouble again? Someone lazily chimed in from the side. Make trouble? That's nothing. A talented woman emerged. The loud voice rose a few decibels, instantly attracting everyone's attention. What's her name? Miss Wei? Yes, Miss Lin Wei. My heart sank suddenly. The hand holding the cake tightened instantly, the hard crumbs digging painfully into my palm. A talented woman? A talented woman in a brothel. Don't tell me some frustrated scholar wrote it for her after getting drunk. Someone scoffed. Bullshit. The loud voice became anxious. I saw it with my own eyes last night. The third young master of the Kyoto prefectural governor's family and several old scholars from the Hamlin Academy were there. The scene TSK. He gesticulated wildly, as if he was the protagonist of these events. That Miss Wei was called out to perform, saying she had composed a new tune. But before the tune could be sung, she recited a poem on the spot. Just one. Everyone was fucking dumbfounded. He paused deliberately, whetting everyone's appetite, before continuing with spittle flying. That poem was written. Holy shit. Clouds adorn her dress, flowers her face, spring breeze caresses the railing. Rich dew. 云想衣裳花想容，春风拂槛露花浓. Listen to the words. Those old Hamlin scholars were so excited that their beards trembled, banging on the table and praising it. The prefectural governor's son's eyes went straight, and he rewarded her with 50 taels of silver on the spot. A sound of gasping filled the ear room, followed by a buzzing discussion. My goodness, 50 taels. That's more than our salary for many years. This poem, Sounds amazing. How could she, a woman from a brothel? Amazing. Truly amazing. Could this Miss Wei be the reincarnation of a literary star? Zuyu Pavilion is going to be rich now. Miss Wei's value will probably skyrocket. Various exclamations, envy, and disbelief were like countless needles, densely piercing my ears. Those familiar lines, Ode to Qingping, first verse, Li Bai's immortal masterpiece for Yang Gui Fei. She just threw it out without any scruples. In a brothel, in front of the prefectural governor's son and Hamlin scholars. She had finally taken that step in the most high-profile way. Of course I knew her purpose. It was rumored that the current student liked to recite poems, so she naturally wanted to attract the guy's attention. But what she didn't know was that the waters of Kyoto were too deep. This talent was like a bait covered in honey, attracting how many sharks who smelled the scent. Other powerful people would come to compete. Competitors would be jealous, secretly create obstacles, and try to find ways to expose her. Once someone started to investigate her origins, would her suddenly enlightened explanation be able to stand up to true old foxes? She exposed a light that did not belong to this era, like lighting an extremely dazzling torch in the night. However, this light not only could not dispel the darkness, but would illuminate herself, attracting all the greedy, suspicious, and bloodthirsty gazes in the darkness. She thought she was the protagonist, but she didn't know that in this man-eating script, a woman without a foundation but possessing an exotic treasure was most likely to become a sacrifice. Chen Montauk, what are you daydreaming about? A familiar constable next to me poked me. What? Are you stunned? Envious of Miss Wei becoming famous with a poem. I suddenly came back to my senses, forcibly suppressed the shock in my heart, and forced out a stiff smile on my face that was uglier than crying, mixed with bewilderment and a trace of envy. Huh? Oh, yes, really amazing. 50 taels. My voice was dry and hoarse. Look at your ambition. The constable laughed and scolded, then turned his head and joined the heated discussion. I lowered my head, looking at the pulverized cake crumbs in my hand, and my stomach churned. She really did it. In the most foolish, most dangerous way I had already predicted. I seemed to see a storm gathering above her head. That dazzling light was the fire she had lit for herself, destined to burn her to ashes. And all I could do at this moment was to shrink into the deepest part of the shadows, hold my breath, and pray that the storm would not affect me. Half a month later, a sensational news spread like wildfire throughout the city. His Royal Highness the King made a private visit to Zuyu Pavilion and personally summoned Miss Wei, who was famous throughout Kyoto. Even more unbelievable was that Miss Wei presented a magnificent, unprecedented frontier poem on the spot, and His Royal Highness the was so pleased that he took her away from the brothel. I was handling a trivial matter when I heard this news. I wasn't overly surprised when I heard the news. These things were within my expectations. I looked toward the palace and sighed softly. Alas, you must be prepared that the path you choose leads to a cliff. After that, I occasionally heard news about her. The talented Lin Wei wrote another Shui Diaoge 2, stunning everyone. The talented Lin Wei wrote Beyond the Border to inspire the soldiers. Lin Wei was exceptionally admitted to the Hamlin Academy. One thing after another marked Lin Wei's gradual approach to the center of power. However, I didn't expect the Hamlin Academy to make an exception for her. It seemed the Crown Prince must have played a role in it. But these poems with completely different styles, all coming from the same person, would surely arouse suspicion among those with ulterior motives. Sure enough, it wasn't long before rumors spread that Lin Wei's poems were plagiarized from the literary giant, Du Qiu. After all, he was a literary giant. They were more willing to believe that Du Qiu had written these poems than a courtesan. Soon, the plagiarism scandal swept through the entire capital. Lin Wei quickly went from being a world-renowned, unparalleled talent to a shameless person who only knew how to plagiarize. When I heard this news, I sneered at the palace. Lin Wei, I wonder how you'll deal with this time. To my surprise, Lin Wei actually suppressed the matter. using the most high-profile method. She used the Crown Prince's connections to invite all the literary giants of the Great Way together. Then, she chose over 100 poems from her previous life and recited them all, in front of everyone. For a moment, she was infinitely glorious. After that, the title Poet Immortal spread like wildfire among the nobles and commoners. The Crown Prince seemed determined to shape her into a legend, a bright pearl he had personally discovered and illuminated the literary world of the Great Way. The turmoil in the Hamlin Academy, with the Crown Prince's strong mediation and the Emperor's tacit consent to some extent, began to turn against the officials who had offended Lin Wei. The officials who impeached her were either reprimanded or transferred. Lin Wei's status as a specially treated attendant was not only not lost, but also gained a bit of tragic color and a legendary aura due to this fearless of rumors attitude. She appeared at various gatherings and poetry meetings hosted by the Crown Prince, and even at meetings involving people's livelihood and the economy. Her talent seemed no longer limited to poetry and began to spread to more practical fields. Have you heard? Miss Wei has presented a new method of salt production. It is said that it can double the production of sea salt and make the salt purer. More than that, she also invented an object called soap, which is 100 times better than bath beans, leaving the skin fragrant after washing. The noble ladies in the palace are all snatching it up. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has adopted several of her brilliant strategies regarding water transport and the market. Even the old minister of the Ministry of Revenue is amazed. These messages, like the tongues of vipers, repeatedly drilled into my ears. Each one made the coldness in my heart deepen. Salt production. Soap. Economic strategy. She's crazy. She's completely crazy. Copying poems can still be excused with the mysterious saying of divine talent. But can these things involving the national economy, people's livelihood, technology, and even core interests be invented casually? Behind each one are involved huge interest groups, complex technological barriers, and the accumulated experience of countless generations of artisans. Her superficial knowledge from the modern internet, under the technological conditions of this era, is nothing more than a castle in the air, which may collapse at any time and bring about unpredictable and disastrous consequences. And once it collapses, the first to be crushed will be her, the inventor. What's even more terrifying is that the Crown Prince is using her. I can see it clearly. What the Crown Prince needs is not a true capable minister, but an auspicious omen that can constantly throw out rare and precious treasures to win him prestige, attack political enemies, and even amass wealth. The more high-profile Lin Wei's inventions, the more political capital the Crown Prince gains, and the more hidden dangers and hatred she accumulates. This isn't doting at all. This is clearly raising poisonous insects. He is using her life and future to feed his own ambitions. On one of these days, after returning home from the Yamen, I found that my door was open. Alarm bells immediately rang in my heart, because I clearly remembered that I had closed the door when I left. And there hasn't been wind in Kyoto recently. It couldn't have been blown open by the wind. Then there's only one possibility. The door was opened by someone. I cautiously touched the self-made dagger hidden in my chest and approached step by step. I carefully pushed open the door and found Lin Wei sitting on a stool as if there was no one else around. "You're back." Lin Wei raised her head, her red lips curling into a deliberately drawn-out arc, with undisguised scrutiny and a condescending pity. When I saw her, my brow furrowed slightly. I looked around left and right and found that I wasn't being followed. I slowly breathed a sigh of relief and closed the door. I asked him politely, "What are you doing here?" Lin Wei seemed not to care about my silence and wariness, but rather, like she had finally waited for her only audience, eagerly wanted to perform her carefully rehearsed monologue. She stood up, her skirt swaying, her jade pendants tinkling, pacing in this small space, each step carrying deliberate elegance and oppression. "Chinamo, do you know?" She stopped, turned to face me, her eyes burning with an almost fanatical flame. That light was even brighter than when she was in the brothel, but it was also more hollow and twisted. Just now, I personally crushed a few noisy bugs. I heard this, and my pupils immediately constricted. She had been blinded by power. Those sour scholars who said I plagiarized. Dookie? Huh. Lin Wei sneered, full of contempt. Old man who was trying to gain fame and praise. The crown prince lightly moved a finger, and his disciples scurried out in a panic to clarify that he was old and senile, and had misremembered the poems. Now, he probably doesn't even dare to recognize his own name. Her voice rose with excitement. You think that's it? The crown prince, in order to clear my name, to smash the faces of those insects, specially held a banquet at the Wenhua Hall. He invited all the arrogant literary giants of Great Wei, the Hanlon scholars, retired grand secretaries, and the heads of academies. All of them. Guess what? She took a step closer, her eyes flashing with manic light, a light devoid of talent. Only the naked pleasure of crushing others. Right there in the Wenhua Hall, which is like a golden palace, in front of the whole court of high officials and those self-righteous old fogies. I recited poetry. His expression was somewhat deranged. One poem after another. 10 poems. 30 poems. 50 poems. A whole 128 poems. From moonlight before my bed to the great river flows eastward. From the country is broken. Mountains and rivers remain to drunk. I trim my sore by lamplight. Not one repeated. Not one inferior. She seemed to have returned to that moment of being the center of attention. Her face flushed with a sickly red, her voice trembling with excitement. Did you see the expressions on those old guys' faces? From doubt, to shock, to numbness, and finally, to fear. Taw. They looked at me like they were looking at a ghost. The crown prince sat at the head, his eyes full of admiration and pride. He was proud of me. Do you know? He personally poured me wine. He called me Poet Immortal Woman. Poet Immortal Woman. Lin Wei savored these 3 words, as if tasting supreme delicacy. Her eyes glazed over. Now, the entire capital, the entire Great Wei, is spreading this name. Those insects who cursed me for plagiarism are now all kneeling on the ground, begging for my forgiveness. Their futures, their reputations. All in my hands. She suddenly looked at me with vindictive delight. And you, Chen Montauk, what did you say back then? You said I would be doomed to eternal damnation. You said I was too high profile. Look at me now. Look at the path beneath my feet. Doomed to eternal damnation are those ants who try to trip me. My path is a highway to heaven. I remained silent, but the knuckles of the hand gripping the dagger were slightly white with effort. With each boast she made, the chill in my heart deepened. Reciting 100 poems? This was no longer talent. It was monstrous. It was driving herself completely onto the stake of inhuman. The crown prince poured wine for her. That was just putting the final garland on the lamb about to be sacrificed. Lin Wei seemed to feel a slight dissatisfaction in my silence. She needed more complete crushing. She raised her chin, like displaying spoils of war, and took out several items from her sleeves one after another, throwing them casually on Chun Mo's rickety wooden table, making a harsh sound. A square object of milky white color, emitting a rich floral fragrance, soap. A roll of silk filled with dense writing, the salt law outline, and a few sketches with strange symbols and lines, perhaps the so-called Canal Transport Improvement Plan. See, Lin Wei pointed to these objects, her tone full of creator-like arrogance. This is what real talent is, not those sour poems. It's practical learning that can enrich the country and strengthen the army and benefit the people. Soap, my little trinket, the ladies in the palace love it. The crown prince has issued a decree for me to supervise the workshop, exclusively for the inner court and nobles. The profits from this are enough to buy 10 Kyoto prefectures. New salt production method. She heavily patted the silk scroll. Once implemented, salt production will double. The national treasury will be filled as never before. The crown prince said, "This gong is enough for a markish. And these memorials on canal transport and market trade. She pointed to the sketches, her eyes full of the satisfaction of controlling everything. The Crown Prince praised me for having insight into the ills of the times and being a genius in governance. The old fogies in the Ministry of Revenue are only fit to carry my shoes. The more she spoke, the more excited she became, as if she could already see herself standing at the pinnacle of power, receiving the worship of all people. Chinemo, do you understand? This is what a transmigrator should do. Change history. Create history. Instead of being like you, like a rat in the gutter, smelling the shit and urine of the streets all your life, counting those few pitiful copper coins. She walked up to me, close enough to smell her breath, carrying the scent of wine and incense, her eyes full of extreme contempt and pity. You know, every time I see you wearing this dog skin, gnawing on hard pancakes in this broken house, I feel pitiful. So pitiful. You're like a toad at the bottom of a well. You will never know how big the sky is. My world is beyond the reach of your imagination. Your world, Linway, open your eyes and look. The bricks under your feet are loose. The wall you are leaning on is riddled with termites. The beam above your head. I deliberately paused for a moment. My gaze swept across the achievements she threw on the table, and finally fixed on her face, distorted by anger and a trace of barely perceptible panic, word by word, as if pronouncing a sentence. The beam above your head is the gallows that the Crown Prince has personally chosen for you. Salt production? Do you know that salt farmers have been boiling salt for generations, relying on the weather? If the new method requires the construction of large-scale salt fields, how many laborers will be conscripted? Where will the money and grain come from? If there is a disaster year or unfavorable construction, which will cause civil unrest, will you take responsibility, or will the Crown Prince take responsibility? Salt merchants have controlled the salt roads for 100 years. With deeply rooted interests, you cut off their wealth. Will they kneel down and thank you? Or hire assassins or poison the salt, and then say it was caused by the new method? Soap workshops? Where do the flower essential oils come from? How much manpower and material resources are consumed in planting, harvesting, and purification? What is the cost? What is the selling price? If the noble ladies in the palace use it and their faces rot, or the secret recipe is leaked and the workshop loses a huge amount of money, this crime of disrupting the palace and wasting national funds, do you think the Crown Prince will carry it for you, or push you out to quell the public's anger? Linway's face gradually turned bad as she listened to my words. And those wonderful plans for canal transport and market trade. The corner of my mouth tugged into a smile without warmth. Talking on paper, divorced from reality. How will the petty officials implement it? How will the local gentry deal with it? Once implemented, chaotic tax cards, distressed merchants, and even civil unrest is almost inevitable. The Crown Prince thinks it's novel now, praising you as a genius. When a big mess really breaks out, and it's necessary to give an explanation to the court and the public to quell the boiling public resentment and the turbulent public opinion. I took half a step forward, causing Linway to take a step back unconsciously, hitting the table. Linway, you and your nonsensical inventions are the most readily available, the most perfect sacrifices. The higher the Crown Prince holds you now, the harder he will trample you in the future. Every compliment you enjoy now is nailing nails into your coffin. Poet immortal woman, when you are tied to the stake, this title will make the fire burn even brighter. You're talking nonsense. Linway screamed piercingly, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The carefully maintained elegance vanished. Her face was pale. Her eyes were a mixture of shock and anger, and a hint of panic that had struck the deepest fear in her heart. You're jealous. You're cursing me. The Crown Prince. He can't live without me. My talent. Talent. I sneered, the laughter cold and bone-piercing. What is your talent? It's plagiarism. It's picking up what others have discarded. It's an ivory tower where you know what it is, but you don't know why. Prosperity must decline. The moon waxes and wanes. Linway, The cliff is right at your feet, and you are dancing happily in the Crown Prince's music, with your eyes closed. Get out! Get out of here! Lin Wei completely collapsed, grabbed the bar of soap on the table, and slammed it at Chun Mo. I dodged it lightly, seeing that it hadn't hit me. She swept the salt law outline and sketches to the ground like crazy, oblivious to the fact that the expensive yun brocade cuffs had been scratched by a wooden splinter at the corner of the table. She pointed to the door, her fingers and voice trembling violently, her eyes hysterical with madness and fear. Chen Montak, you are only worthy of rotting in the mud for the rest of your life. You will never understand my path. The day I become empress, I want you to see with your own eyes. I want you to kneel. The harsh words weren't finished before she, as if no longer able to endure this dilapidated house and my gaze, forcefully pushed me away. She stumbled out of the small courtyard like escaping from purgatory. Her meticulously styled hair had a stray strand loose, and her expensive dress was stained with dust and mud from the doorframe. In the room, only the intense, sickening incense remained, a bar of soap lay on the floor, and scattered silk sketches. I slowly bent down and picked up the fragrant bar of soap from the ground, my fingertips icy cold. Outside the window, twilight gathered, dark clouds hung low, making it difficult to breathe. The storm was really coming. It would be fiercer and more deadly than he had anticipated. As for me, I reminded her not out of kindness. Knowing her as I do, she wouldn't rein herself in, but would continue to cling to the Crown Prince, to make the Crown Prince promise to take responsibility for her, and then continue to offer a large number of things. And the Crown Prince's patience would probably run out soon. Lin Wei's last value might be as a fuse to ignite the beacon fire, and a sacrifice to appease the anger. As for me, I gave her a sense of crisis, so she naturally wouldn't expose me, another transmigrator, to the Crown Prince, as that would only devalue her. But before I could wait for her to be dealt with by the Crown Prince, something else happened in Wei. The Emperor died, although the message issued by the court was that he died of a sudden illness. But I always felt that this matter was inseparable from the Crown Prince and Lin Wei. The change of power is always accompanied by bloodshed, and Lin Wei is just a particularly conspicuous leaf in this storm. After the national mourning ended, the new emperor ascended the throne and changed the era name to Chunping. The first imperial edict of the new dynasty was to establish the empress. When the news that Su Clan, the daughter of the prime minister, is gentle and virtuous, and her virtue is unparalleled in the world, and is established as the empress spread throughout the capital, Chun Mo was squatting on a street corner, gnawing on a steamed bun. He heard the discussion at the nearby tea stall, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a sneer. As expected, the position of empress, the mother of the world, could a woman who came from a brothel and relied on bewitching talent and ingenious skills to rise to the top ever aspire to it? The daughter of the prime minister, a lady from a prominent family, that is the cornerstone of consolidating imperial power and balancing the court. Lin Wei, from beginning to end, she was just a useful knife in the hands of the new emperor, destined to be broken. Chun Mo could almost imagine Lin Wei's expression when she heard the news: astonishment, anger, unwillingness, and the panic of being betrayed. But I don't know what promise or other things the new emperor used to make Lin Wei willing to continue to give him advice. Because the new emperor issued a lot of policies after he ascended the throne, and many of them have shadows of some policies from the previous life. But when I saw the words single whip method written on the notice from the Yamen, I knew that I still underestimated Lin Wei's madness after all. Is she crazy? Could the single whip method be mentioned casually? This policy is a huge loss to those aristocratic interest groups. Sure enough, it didn't take long for this matter to cause an uproar in the capital. From time to time, there were also remarks about Lin Wei being a demon woman who brought disaster to the country. But the difference between this time and the previous time is that this time the new emperor did not rehabilitate Lin Wei. Instead, he was unusually silent. For a long time after that, I never heard any news about Lin Wei again. Her inventions, her policies. There was no news at all. The policy of single whip method also slowly fermented during this period. It can't be said that it was very smooth. It can only be said that it couldn't be implemented at all. After all, when the Qing dynasty tried out the single whip method, the emperor made huge concessions by never increasing taxes, and even so, it took 2 generations of continuous efforts to implement this policy. Now she wants to accomplish this matter with just 1 decree. That's just wishful thinking. I don't believe that the new emperor is a fool. He wouldn't think of these things. He just wants to test how far those nobles will go. At worst, Lin Wei will be pushed out to take the blame in the end. A month later, the Yamen posted another notice. The notice was posted on the gray wall of the Yamen, the ink dripping like newly added scars. The surrounding crowd buzzed, pointing and pointing, all kinds of emotions fermenting in the turbid air, astonishment, anger, schadenfreude, and more the indifferent mentality of onlookers. I squeezed at the edge of the crowd, my eyes fixed on those lines of cold words. Each word was like an ice cone quenched with poison, piercing deeply into my eyes, and the biting cold instantly spread to my limbs. Even my breathing stagnated. Investigate the demon woman Lin, who was originally of lowly origin, used sweet words and flattering appearances to bewitch the emperor. She used demonic and evil arts to create false poems, songs, and ingenious skills, deceiving the world and stealing fame, and disturbing the court. Moreover, she is vicious and harbors evil intentions, and secretly poisoned the late emperor's medicine, causing the dragon to ascend to heaven, and the world to grieve together. Her crimes are monstrous and innumerable. She is to be executed by slow slicing, 3 days later, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and publicly executed in the West Market as a warning to others. Slow slicing. These 2 words exploded in my mind, deafening my eardrums. Demon woman? Poison the late emperor? What a magnificent and extremely vicious frame-up. The new emperor ascended the throne. His foundation was unstable, and the single whip method touched the reverse scale of the entire powerful class. Implementation was blocked, popular resentment boiled, and the opposition in the court was surging like a tide. He needs to quell public anger. He needs to shift the contradiction, and he needs a sacrifice of sufficient weight to stabilize his precarious dragon chair. And Lin Wei, this female poet immortal and auspicious omen who was once held up to the clouds by him, shining brightly. This woman who came from a humble background, without any foundation, and full of heretical labels, is the most perfect and ready-made sacrifice. Label her as a demon woman and confirm the monstrous crime of poisoning the late emperor. So, all the previous turmoil caused by her advice, the resistance to the single whip law, the chaos in economic policy, and even the potential for public resentment caused by the forced labor of salt workers, now had an outlet. All the blame could be logically shifted onto this chess piece about to be crushed. Her talent, her shocking inventions and policies now became ironclad proof of her bewitching sorcery. The crown prince, no, the emperor now, as much as he once appreciated these novel ideas, now needed them to prove Lin Wei's inhumanity and evil. Using her life to wash away the stain of his obstructed reforms, to appease the anger of the powerful, to rebuild his authority, which had been damaged by his haste. This game, perhaps, was destined for this, ending from a moment she stepped in a Drunken Moon pavilion with such fanfare. The emperor was merely the most ruthless and skillful chess player, leading her step by step to this execution platform. 3 days later, West Market. The sky was as gloomy as if splattered with ink, pressing down oppressively. The usually bustling market was now shrouded in a suffocating silence. Only the cold sounds of armor rubbing together and the rough shouts of the constables maintaining order echoed in the heavy air. The execution platform was high, and a figure was bound to the rough wooden stake. It was Lin Wei. Her once magnificent palace attire had been stripped away, replaced by a dirty and tattered, ochre prison uniform. Her hair was scattered and stuck to her pale face, and the eyes that once burned with ambition now held only a deathly gray emptiness and a bone-deep fear. She was like a fallen leaf, battered by wind and rain, hanging on a branch, awaiting final destruction. Her body trembled violently, uncontrollably, her teeth chattering. Around the execution platform, a dense crowd of people thronged. Their gazes were complex, some gleeful, some indifferent, some with a morbid excitement, and a few showing reluctance and sympathy. But more were filled with the deep-seated hatred and fear of the demoness, stirred up by government proclamations. Kill her. Dismember this demoness. Poison the late emperor. Wreaked havoc on the court. 1,000 cuts. Monster. Return our peace. Various angry shouts rose and fell, forming a surging torrent, impacting the execution platform. People waved their fists, spewing spittle, as if to pour out all the frustrations of their lives onto this woman about to be executed. She had become a concrete symbol of all anger, all fear. I hid in the shadows at the outermost edge of the crowd, leaning against a cold earthen wall. The brim of my hat was pulled low, obscuring most of my face. Soon a strong, bloody smell hit my throat. Was she stupid? Arrogant? Did she bring it upon herself? Yes. But looking at her current state, hearing the curses around me that wanted to tear her apart, I saw more clearly the fangs of this era, how it devoured ideals, how it crushed individuals, how it twisted any inappropriate light into a monstrosity, and then sacrificed it in the most cruel way to power and ignorance. She seemed to see me, her pupils suddenly shrinking to pinpoints, her throat emitting a discordant, dying beast-like growl, struggling violently, the binding ropes digging deeply into her flesh. I knew what she wanted to say, nothing more than that she regretted it, that she wanted me to save her, maybe even wanting to implicate me in order to gain a sliver of hope for herself. But she could only utter a series of moans. I guess the new emperor had poisoned her vocal cords for fear she would speak nonsense. The execution supervisor sat expressionlessly on the high platform, symbolically reading out the verdict, filled with lies and malice. The hour has come. When a majestic voice cut through the oppressive air, the entire West Market was eerily silent for a moment. The red-clothed, expressionless executioner walked onto the execution platform. The willow-leaf-thin, cold-gleaming knife in his hand was like the tongue of a viper. The first cut landed. The position was carefully chosen, not fatal, but able to bring excruciating pain and ultimate humiliation. A scream, so shrill it didn't sound human, suddenly tore through the silence. The pain and fear contained in that sound were enough to make even the most stone-hearted person's heart tremble. After a brief silence, the crowd erupted in even more fanatical shouts, as if the scream was the fuse that ignited their excitement. Good riddance. Demoness. Serves her right. I have been a constable here for a long time and was already accustomed to this kind of execution scene. I felt nothing about it. She didn't listen to advice in the first place and insisted on joining the crown prince. People always have to pay the price for their own stupidity and ignorance. I looked at Lin Wei, who was being executed on the platform at this moment, and couldn't help shaking my head. Alas, wouldn't it have been better to live? After sighing, I turned around and slowly left here. After that, I never encountered any other self-righteous time travelers. Perhaps Lin Wei and I were the only time travelers in this era, or perhaps there were many. It's just that they all chose to hide themselves secretly, not letting anyone discover them. Just like bugs in the dark forest. Extra. I am Li Qingxian, the crown prince of the Great Wei. I first heard the name Miss Wei in a secret report from Drunken Moon Pavilion. The incompetent third son of the prefect's family was infatuated with a poem, and even several old Hanlon scholars praised it. At first, I only thought it was another courtesan who knew how to scheme, or a down-on-his-luck talented scholar, using her to make a name for himself. Until I visited in plain clothes. That woman, Lin Wei, was indeed somewhat attractive, but what really made me narrow my eyes was the flame in her eyes. Not the coquettishness or sorrow common to courtesans, but a almost arrogant light, scrutinizing and superior to everything around her. When she recited that border poem, my heart skipped a beat. The poem was extremely good, grand, and imposing, not the pattern that could be cultivated in a boudoir or brothel. More importantly, the expression on her face when she recited it didn't show any signs of deliberation or study, but seemed to be restating something self-evident. Interesting. I took her away from Drunken Moon Pavilion. A woman of low status, but possessing exotic treasures, was a handy knife and an excellent pawn. I need prestige. I need to break the stifling atmosphere held by those old foxes in the court. Her seemingly endless talent, those exquisite but stylistically diverse poems, are the best stepping stones. The Hamlin Academy scandal. I couldn't have wished for more. The bigger the commotion, the better. I only need to hint slightly, then give it a push, and her title of female poetry immortal will be elevated to the altar. Those so-called masters and purists who are trampled down will conveniently free up positions for me to install my own people. Her fame has become a sharp weapon for me to cleanse the literary world and establish my authority. Her tearful eyes of gratitude. I saw my eyes and only found them laughable. A chess piece should have the awareness of being a chess piece. Her appetite is indeed more than just that. Soap, new method of salt production, memorials on canal transport. She threw out these ingenious ideas like offering treasures. I praised her on the surface, but sneered in my heart. Does this woman really think she's a goddess descended from the heavens? Her ideas, seemingly ingenious, are actually full of loopholes and shallow to a pathetic degree. How many powerful interests are involved in the salt laws? How much soap is consumed? The canal transport memorials are even more armchair strategies. But her eagerness to prove herself, her desire to be recognized and admired, is exactly what I need. I need someone to stir up the hornet's nest, to touch those deeply rooted interest groups. She is the most suitable stick for stirring up the muck. The more shocking the thing she throws out, the greater the shock, the more clearly I can see how deep the cord is, who are the weather vanes, and who are the diehards. Every high-profile strategy offering of hers is adding fuel to my furnace, burning away obstacles, and creating cracks for me to exploit. As for her personally, the brighter the light, the bigger the target. I only need to sit tight and give support at the right time, making her even more devoted. The admiration and dependence in her eyes, that self-righteous fighting side by side, are even better tools for manipulation. Be the empress? I only have a sneer in my heart. The prime minister's daughter is the choice for empress. Her, a auspicious omen destined to be burned to ashes. My imperial father passed away at just the right time. Oh no, now I should be Jin the imperial. My grief is real, but deep down, there's a sense of relief. The transfer of power allows no mercy. As for that bowl of medicine, does it matter? What matters is that someone needs to be held accountable, that the world needs an explanation, and even more so, a sufficiently weighty reason to quell the overwhelming waves that will be caused by the new policies. When I decided to make the prime minister's daughter the empress, that woman dared to make a scene in front of me. Who exactly gave her such gall? Or was someone instructing her? But none of this matters. As long as I give her a little temptation, casually throw out a lie that this is just a temporary measure, she will continue to throw out those novel things for me without hesitation. But when the policy of single whip law came out of her mouth, I knew it was time to abandon this chess piece. Single whip law? Looking at the instantaneous uproar of opposition from both the court and the public, looking at the undisguised killing intent in the eyes of the nobles, I knew that this knife had become dull and might even turn around and injure myself. It is time. A demonic woman bringing disaster to the country, poisoning the late emperor. These charges were woven together effortlessly. All of her past talents and inventions have now become ironclad evidence of her bewitching and deceiving the masses. The poems she plagiarized are proof of her deceiving the world and stealing fame. Her crude new policies are ironclad evidence of her disrupting the court. Her intimacy with me is further proof of her bewitching the crown prince. What a perfect closed loop. I only need to remain silent and give a slight hint, and those forces who have long hated her to the core or who are eager to show loyalty to the new emperor will naturally pounce on her and tear her to pieces. Lingxi, death by 1,000 cuts. Yes, only the most extreme cruelty can completely extinguish the flames of turmoil caused by her, can deter all restless people, and can cleanly push all the blame for the unsuccessful implementation of the new policies onto her, this culprit. Her blood will cleanse the stain on the road of my new policies. Her screams will become the funeral song for my consolidation of power. On the day of the execution, I stood in a pavilion not far from the West Market, gazing into the distance from the window. Dark clouds hung low, and the crowds were like ants. Watching her being tied to the execution platform, the eyes that once burned with ambition now only contained ash and fear, watching her body contorting in pain. My heart was cold and devoid of emotion. Auspicious omen? A sacrifice. They are two sides of the same coin. Her value, from a moment it was squeezed dry, was only left to be a sacrifice, to pave the last brick for me on the road to the true pinnacle of power. Her screams are truly miserable. I picked up my teacup, gently blew on the floating froth, and faintly ordered the attendants beside me, who were as silent as cicadas in winter. Pass down the decree. The demonic woman has been executed to the delight of the people. Instruct the Ministry of Revenue to redeliberate the tax regulations and strive for stability. The teacup landed, making a soft sound. Outside was Lin Wei's doomsday. Inside was my new era,